Hey everyone, welcome back to Love Wins, where the truth matters because it's the truth that sets us free. And it really does. The problem is, it's hard to find truth in a confusing world where lots of people claim they have the truth and know the truth, but so few are spending time actually pursuing the one who is the truth. It's interesting to me, in a sad way, that the more distance there is between us and God, the more religious we become. Let me give you a simple example of that. When Adam and Eve were first outside the garden, they had Cain and Abel, and they had a simple worship system. They would build an altar and they would offer a lamb, and that lamb was not an offering to God, it was a reminder to them of the one that God would send them, Jesus, the Lamb of God, who would take away the sins of the world. My point is, they offered one lamb or one animal at a time. Many years later, when Israel chose to have a system of kings, which God never wanted to begin with, showing their distance, their increasing distance from Him, they would sometimes offer hundreds and even thousands of animals at a time. Because again, the more distance there is between us and God, the more religious we become. We try and compensate for the lack of genuine connection with doing things and trying to appease and impress Him. So we come to the time when Jesus was born, which we've been spending some time on over the last few weeks, and we see a nation unprepared, ignorant, not even knowing that He was there. When Herod discovered He was there, he was so shaken and threatened by the idea that a king was born that he had all the babies in the area killed, hoping to preserve his right to the throne. And last week we looked at the point that Jesus didn't come to do what Israel was expecting Him to do. They wanted a human ruler who would overthrow the Romans, reestablish the Jewish nation as an independent empire, and make them the best, strongest, richest, most powerful empire in the world. But Jesus came to do something very different. He came to change the empire of the human heart, because He knew, and still knows, that greatness begins within, not without. And that true greatness is loving others more than ourselves. That true greatness is kindness and peace and mercy, grace. Qualities that human empires don't value that much. I want to take you back to Isaiah 52 and 3 today. If you want to shock a Jew, just have them read that chapter from their own text. Sadly, Jews are much like Christians. They have the text, but they don't spend much time with it. In Isaiah 52, leading into 53, it says this: Behold, my servant will deal prudently, or will prosper. He will be exalted and extolled and be very high. Just as many were astonished at you, so his visage was marred more than any man, his form more than the sons of men. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths at him. For what had not been told them, they will see, and what they had not heard, they will consider. In other words, Jesus forced people to look again, to listen again, because He was someone they had not heard about nor considered before. Then it goes in the beginning of 53 to a description of Jesus Himself. Before it goes into the part about what He would do as the Lamb of God, it just describes Him. Listen to the description. Who has believed our report? Because, again, He was not expected. And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He will grow up before Him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. Listen to this part. He has no stately form or splendor, and when we see Him, there is no beauty that we should desire Him. He is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. We hid, as it were, our faces from Him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. It's fancy language. It's Old English language. It's not the way we would write it today. But the content is clear. Jesus was in every way unexpected. And probably one of the most striking ways in which he was unexpected was his personal appearance. Many have been recommending to me The Chosen. I have no reason not to watch it other than time. I will get there at some point. Haven't gotten there yet. But I've watched a couple of the trailers, and I've seen the character who plays Jesus. And I have seen a couple scenes. And one thing that struck me is that in that Chosen's portrayal of Jesus, it's obvious in every scene who Jesus is. But the Bible tells a different story. And that's not a criticism of The Chosen. It's just shows another angle of how what we think we know, we don't. The Bible tells a very different story. That even after Jesus' public ministry of 3.5 years of casting out demons and walking on water and feeding thousands with a little boy's lunch, and all the amazing things that he did, and all the places that he went, and all the people that opposed him and argued with him, when it came down to his arrest in Gethsemane, Judas had to identify him with a kiss, because there was nothing about Jesus' appearance that made him stand out from the other disciples that were around him. He was just one of the crowd. Isaiah said it would be so, that there would be nothing about his appearance that we should desire him. He wasn't handsome. He wasn't imposing. He didn't have an air about him of strength or splendor. He just blended in. And you say, well, how could the Son of God blend in? Because he became one of us in every way, shape, and form. He wasn't a spectacular one of us. He wasn't the prom king. He wasn't the quarterback, star quarterback of the football team. He was just a guy amongst other guys in an ordinary world from an ordinary place. In fact, if you look up Nazareth on a map, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's not Galilee itself. That region was considered like lesser Israel, like where the lower people lived, where the less fortunate, the less important Israelites lived. But within Galilee, Nazareth was nothing. It's why Nathanael asked when he was called to be a disciple, Nazareth? Can anything good come from Nazareth? So Jesus was born into poverty. We know that because his parents offered a dove at his dedication, which is what poor people offer as a offering. Poor from nowhere. Born into a family where she was pregnant, not by her husband, before they were married. Scandal. There were so many reasons to discount Jesus. And it was by design. Firstly, it was by design so that none of us could not relate to him. We could say, well, I'm too messed up. My family's story's too screwed up. None of us can say anything like that because he can relate. But it's deeper than that. Jesus didn't come to win us by his appearance, by his charisma, by his dashing personality. Sure, he was kind. And sure, if you spent any amount of time with him, you quickly realized there was something profoundly different and better about him. But at first glance, there was nothing. He was just another person. I had a friend who started out average and did very well for himself. became very wealthy. And he said the hardest part about having money was not knowing who your friends are. If you're very, very good looking, you often wonder, do people like me? Are they interested in me romantically because they like me for me? Or is it just they just like what I look like? Jesus didn't want to be liked or listened to or followed for any superficial reason. So all of that was stripped away, and he was just an ordinary, maybe less than ordinary guy from a less than average place, from a less than average family. There was literally nothing that he could put on a resume that would make an employer go, wow, we got to have this guy. And it was all intentional. Jesus did not come to establish a human empire with a shining, brazen, gold skinned, muscle bound hero at the top. It's not the story. Last week, some people wondered where I was going with the whole Make America Great Again politics. So let me try again to explain. Jesus knew that nothing good comes from people whose hearts aren't good. That ultimately no system, no military, no amount of money, no amount of power, nothing can bring good out of people whose hearts aren't good. So instead of trying to change the nation or the world through policies and politics and power, Jesus ignored all of that and went to the root of the issue. You can force a society to not have abortions, for example. Desperate women will still have them. Plus, it won't change the heart of those who think we should have them. Policies and rules, the Bible's clear. The law is powerless. It doesn't do anything. But love does lots of things. Let me give you one example as we wrap up here today of what love can do. Mary found in Jesus a man who respected her, who cared about her, who helped her, who valued her, who didn't try to use her for her physical attributes, for her sensuality. He just loved her and respected her as a person. That had never happened to her before. And his friendship and his who he was healing to her. So much so that she just wanted to be where he was. And there's a story of Mary and Martha, the two sisters, where Martha got mad one day because she was in the kitchen, busy, working hard and doing good things. And Mary was just sitting at the feet of Jesus. And Martha got so frustrated that she expressed her frustration to Jesus and basically told Jesus, you need to make her get up and do something and help me. And Jesus said, Martha, you're busy and you're troubled about many things. But Mary has chosen the one thing that matters. And it will not be taken from her. Mary's relationship with Jesus, and history has tried to make that relationship into something it wasn't, because we always try and make Jesus and or others into our image. But there was nothing sexual about their relationship. Nothing. In fact, that was probably the secret of Jesus' influence over her, was that he wasn't like that towards her, like all the other men were. just before Jesus was to be crucified, the week before, the 7 days preceding, there was a gathering. Jesus was invited to the home of a prominent Pharisee. And as they were eating the meal, this powerful aroma, beautiful aroma, filled the room, causing everyone to stop and seek out the source. The source was Mary, washing Jesus' feet with this expensive perfume and her hair. And no one had provided Jesus with the proper hospitality of washing his feet, of the feet of the guests when they came in, so his feet were dirty. And she got down and washed them with expensive perfume and her hair. She could have washed him without any perfume. That would have been free. She could have washed him with cheaper perfume. Nobody would have questioned that. You see, Mary did something she was not required to do, at an expense that she was not required to spend, because she genuinely loved Jesus. This ordinary man who would blend into any crowd, from a family that didn't count, from a town that didn't rank. And it was all done on purpose, because God's inviting us to fall in love with him for who he is, not for his wealth, his power, his heaven, but for him. For him. So if we want to make our family great again, or our neighborhood great again, or our province or state great again, or our country great again, or our world great again, it begins by falling in love with the one who is great. And after that, we will find ourselves doing things the law does not require, because love far exceeds the law. I invite you to keep pursuing Jesus. He is the truth, and he will set us free. We'll see you next time.